Hello everybody! Before we begin, I'm going to talk to you about these two books here, Winged Horse Warrior and High Elves of Old, my two novels that are already available in Amazon right here in the link below. I really hope that you like them if you do get them, and please leave a like, subscribe, and I hope that you enjoy the video. Goodbye! Hello everybody, how are you? I am RH9, and in this quick review, because I have to go, I'm going to talk to you about The Rithmatist by Brandon Sanderson. This book was published in 2013, and I must admit that it was one of my favorite books of the year in which I read it, which is like 2 years ago. For this review, I just reread the plot in Wikipedia, and well, I still remember it fairly clearly. So yeah, we can officially begin talking about the author now, Brando Sanderson, Mando, Fando, Kando, Rando, who is the author of many series, among them Mistborn, Warbreaker, The Rithmatist, The Stormlight Archive, White Sand, Elantris, many more. He is essentially the author of the Cosmere Universe, a series of stories that I will be explaining more later on in some other video, that is a whole universe, Marvel, DC-like, that is amazing and full of incredible stories. But today we're going to be talking about The Rithmatist, which is not about that. It is not a Cosmere novel. So The Rithmatist takes place on an alternate Earth, and I'm already going on with that. No, we're going to talk about Brandon here, Brandon Sanderson. He was always a fan of fantasy, and especially the authors Terry Pratchett and Robert Jordan. He studied chemistry, then passed on to English, and began writing almost compulsively. So much that Brandon had a total of 13 novels published by the time, 13 novels written, by the time he published his first novel, which turned out to be the sixth one, Elantris. So Brandon had already written 13 novels. 13 novels by the time he published his first book, which means that the last three books he wrote with rather hopelessness. He did not think that he would ever be published. So I believe for his 11th book, he decided to write the most complex, the biggest, and just most outrageously incredible story he could come up with. And this is how the Stormlight Archive came to be, a fun fact. That's the fun fact for also for another video. The Stormlight Archive actually came to be in his 11th book, when he challenged himself to write the biggest story he could possibly create. So he published eventually his sixth novel, which turned out to be Elantris, and it came out on 2005. And 2 years later, his favorite author, Robert Jordan, passed away due to a strange blood disease. So Harriet McDougal, Robert Jordan's wife, had the job to find a new author to finish The Wheel of Time. And she discovered this author when a man who was working with her came and gave her an obituary written by none other than Brando Sando. Brandon had always been a fan of Robert Jordan, and when he found out that the author had died, not only did he feel pain that his favorite series would never be completed, but he also felt sorry for the man because he really liked Robert Jordan. He was a fan of Robert Jordan and really enjoyed his stories. And when he found out that Robert Jordan died, he immediately sat down and wrote an obituary that got all the way into the hands of Harriet McDougal. She contacted Brandon, discovering that he was also an author, that he had just published Elantris and later on the first book in the Mistborn trilogy, The Final Empire, and they made a deal. And eventually Brandon ended up publishing The Gathering Storm, Towers of Midnight, and eventually the last book in the Wheel of Time series, A Memory of Light. And that story eventually, writing those last three books of the world's largest fantasy series at the time, pushed Brandon and put him up there with with the best authors of his era. And thanks to The Wheel of Time, Brandon really blew up, and he really began to sell. So he later on published The Well of Ascension and The Hero of Ages, the last two books in the Mistborn series, and eventually he published The Stormlight Archive, which is the one I'm talking about. And in 2013, he published this book, The Rithmatist, which is the one we're going to be talking about today. So The Rithmatist. Now that I have told you about Brando Sando, we can officially start talking about the plot of this book. And it follows Joelle and Melody, two boys that attend a school that teaches arithmetic. And arithmetic is a very interesting magic system that Brandon developed for this story. Arithmetic has to do with chalk, and with chalk, and using that chalk you have to design lines and circles that you can use for battles. So different types of lines mean different things. You have circles that are defenses, you have smaller circles that you can use to optimize your defense, you have lines that mean attacks, and you can also create chalklings, which are little creatures like dragons or unicorns or human soldiers that you can create out of chalk in order to defend yourself. They're like soldiers and footmen, and you have all of these things in arithmetic. And arithmetic is a majestic magic system. I really love how Brandon designed it. It is essentially one of my favorite magic systems of all time, and even though it's not on the level of allomancy, feruchemy, or hemallurgy from the Mistborn series, also by Brandon, it is a very interesting magic system, and it proves how Brandon is great at designing magics. That's what he specializes on, after all. So it follows Joel and Melody on their quest to discover a kidnapper who has been taking hold of children using a strange type of chalkling. So they have to uncover this kidnapper, and almost by accident they get flung into this mission. Well, they also have to discover who is the new teacher that arrived at their school and pretty much defeated the oldest and the strongest teacher in the whole school without breaking a sweat. So yeah, it's a very interesting story, and I really recommend that you read it. And now we can officially begin the review. I'm going to make this review fairly quickly because I have to go, first of all, and I also spent a lot of time talking about Brando's life. So the Rithmatist, and I do not have to move to the side. The Rithmatist, the plot. I really like the plot for this story. It was one of the books that pushed me into reading more fantasy, and even though it might be impulsed by nostalgia here, I still love the story in every way. It is a very compelling plot. Brandon is an outliner, he is an architect, he loves to design his stories to make outlines, and you can see that when you're reading his books, how everything clicks in the end, how everything just falls into place perfectly, flawlessly, how it just works magnificently. It's an amazing work of art what Brandon did. I really like this plot, and especially for younger audiences, because the Rithmatist is YA fiction, younger audiences will love it with all their hearts. It's amazing, an amazing story, and I really recommend it. I really enjoyed the plot. And as for the characters, I really like how Joel and Melody, how they are both designed. Joel, you can see how he really wants to become a Rithmatist, and how Melody, she hates drawing lines and just spends all her time drawing chalklings. How their interaction is just amazing. How at one point she reveals that she does not like being an Arithmetist because she has to be away from her family for such a long time, and I believe that they do not come to see her to events, so she misses them a lot. While you have Joel, who would do anything in his life to become a Rithmatist, and he has done everything he can, and yet he has not become one. And it is a very interesting dynamic between the two. I really like how they become friends, how they start from enemies, you could say. They didn't really like each other at the beginning, to all the way to great friends that end up saving the school together. It's a very interesting dynamic that I really enjoy. And as for the villains, the teacher and the kidnapper and all these other characters, I really like how Brandon develops them throughout the story, even though we rarely meet any of them. Well, the teacher we do meet, but not as much as I'd like, and other things as well. The other characters we barely meet. The kidnapper, we barely meet. And it's, even though we don't meet him, even though we don't know him for most of the story, Brandon develops him in a very interesting way, and I really love his character work of this book. Now we can go into the narrative, and Brandon has a narrative that I really like. He writes in a way that is not, it's not complicated. You can read through his stories with fairly without knowing every single word that has ever been designed for English. You do not need an extensive vocabulary to read and understand Brandon. But it's also very, very, very compelling. He writes in a way that I can literally read Rhythm of War, which is about 1,200 words long, 1,300 pages long, I'm sorry, 1,300 pages long, and I can read that in a week and a half, 2 weeks, because I really, really like how he writes. It's very easy to read Brandon. And as for the execution, I really, really like how Brandon did everything, how he pulled everything together, how he grabbed the magic and the characters and the setting and his narrative and just combined them in the best YA fiction that I read in that year. I really enjoyed reading this book. And before I give the grade, I'm going to talk about the world building real quick. And Brandon is a master at world building. He is great. He is this generation's Tolkien, and it is really evident how he really has made a great effort to create each one of his different worlds. I cannot wait to read the Estlanian book 2 of the Rithmatist, and I am I'm looking forward to his next book really with a great excitement, not just for the Arithmetist, but also for Mistborn and the Stormlight Archive and Warbreaker and all his other stories. I really want to read them. I really want to read what he has up his sleeve next. So this has been my very quick and very exhaustive review for the Rithmatist. I really hope that you enjoyed it. I will give it a 93 out of 100. That's right, the first book in this series to get 5 whole stars. So you can see that I enjoyed it very much. And you can get the link to buy it down here. And if you enjoyed it, please leave a like and leave your comment with your opinion about this book. Anyway, I really hope that you enjoyed it, and you can get all the links down below. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you later. Goodbye.